whenever you read the Arizal, or at least the way it's been passed down to us, so there's a million different terms and concepts that he uses. It makes it very difficult to follow. So we're just reading it for the atmosphere.
For the fun.
No, it's more than fun, but the atmosphere. Well, and again, the idea is that we want to get a sense that, like the Alter Rebbe wrote, and the Rebbe wrote, that tsaras, this leprosy, this disease, is a spiritual disease, and it really is a manifestation of lights without vessels. There's nothing containing the light. That's why it appears the way that it appears. And it can only happen to a person who's on a very high spiritual level. So let's see. So this is the source that everybody looks to see what the Arizal said about this. And it's Shar Lamed Chet in Eitz Chaim, and it's the 38th gate. It's called the Shar of Le'ah Rachel. This is a whole series, this whole Hichal. The Eitz Chaim is divided into Hichalot also, into chambers. Each chamber has about 7 chapters, 7 gates. They change, they're a different one, each one. And they have a general topic, each chamber. So the general topic of the 6th gate, of the 6th chamber, the 6th chamber is called a Chala Nukva. Everything that has to do with femininity. Okay. So we're looking at the 38th gate, chapter 7. And you see at the beginning it says, I don't know if it says it in your version, Mem Taf.
Okay. Yeah.
Madurat Nina. Meaning this is the second writing of the same information. It was written a few times. Madurat Kama and Madurat Nina. Usually the Madurat Nina is the more authoritative considered. And the initial
Who rewrote
version.
It? Same person?
This whole discussion in the world of research of the Arizal's writings. The going theory is that Rav Chaim Vital had a notebook that was where he wrote as the Arizal was teaching. Then he went back home and he wrote what's called the first version. And then when he went back to Damascus and he went back to live there after the Arizal passed away, he went over all his notebooks and the first versions that he wrote, and he put out a second version. This was never published. We don't have either of them. We don't have the notebook, we don't have the first version, we don't have the second version. So where did these all come from? There's a man called Rav Yaakov Tzemach, and he says that he copied them from Rav Chaim Vital, that he listened to them and he copied them and he wrote them. But he never published, because Rav Chaim Vital told him not to. So he put all his writings in the Gniza, in Hebron. And then they were buried the way the Gniza letters are buried. But the smart people who eventually came and dug it up, and they found his notebooks and they found his books that he had written. So these were copied by a lot of people. So a lot of people had copies of these. Over time, Rav Chaim Vital himself taught people who came to Damascus, he taught them privately. And you have to remember that people back then had tremendous memories, amazing memories. So they say that he read from his notebooks, from his books, what he had written. He never published it, but when he taught, he read from them. There was a shir that he gave every Shabbos. There were apparently private shirim that he gave to people. And one of these people was Meir Paprish. Meir Paprish spent like a year and a half or something like that in Damascus listening to Rav Chaim Vital. And he memorized. He used to teach him on Shabbos. So talk about the first Chazara. First time somebody committed from memory. He wrote. So everything that Rav Chaim Vital taught him on Shabbos, he would, Motzei Shabbos right away, he would write down. And so he wrote this. And apparently Rav Chaim Vital was using all 3 sets of notes that he had. The initial notes, the first set of notes, and the second set of notes. So, and he was telling Rav Meir Paprish, I'm writing it from here, I'm writing it from there. I'm reading from here, reading from there. And so when he wrote where he had told him he had taken it from. This is the going theory. It's much more complex than that because there's all kinds of stuff. The amazing thing is, I think I've told you this before, the original manuscript that Rav Chaim Vital wrote was never published. It still has not been published.
Where is it?
That's a question for the book collectors. Apparently, one part of it is, one half is here in Yerushalayim, another half is somewhere in the world. It's never been published. The people who have it never agreed to let it be published. But they show it from time to time to big scholars that come to them. So one of the people who was really, I told you a few times, he's in terms of this, the scholarship of the Rizal, he's the world expert today. Even though they don't like the fact that he used to have a knit yarmulke instead of a black yarmulke. Now he has a black yarmulke, so he's okay. Is Yosef Avivi. And Yosef Avivi was shown the manuscript here in Yerushalayim. And he remembers the Arizal's writings by heart. He has done so much work with it that he really memorized. And he says the discrepancies are minute. Like somebody who wouldn't know them intimately wouldn't even notice the differences. It was so good what Rav Meir Paprish did. So anyway, so that's what we have in front of us. So he starts, V'neve'er parashat negaim v'yidber tzat bi'urei Rachel ve'Leah. So he says, let's explain the parsha, our parsha, Tazria-Metzora, about the negaim, the different blemishes, the tzaras of the body, the skin, of the vessels, the clothing, and of the house. And through this, we'll explain a few of the things that relate to Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah are two parts of the feminine construct in Kabbalah, right? So Kabbalah sees all of the Torah in its very symbolic form. It's not saying that it's only that, but this is how it explains everything. And so Rachel and Leah, who married Jacob, so there are two aspects of the feminine that had to unite with the masculine. The masculine here is the Zah, Zeir Anpin. Yaakov is Zeir Anpin. Ktiv, so it begins, Adam ki ve'or besaro, set or sapachat or vaheret, right? So a person who has in the skin of his flesh either a set or sapachat or vaheret, right? So the two are set and vaheret, and then there's two toladot, right? I think so. V'hinei, these are different colorings of the blemish. Hinei Adam Muzah. So the man himself, Adam ki ve'or besaro, who are we talking about? Which Adam are we talking about? What man are we talking about? The Zah himself, nothing less. Meaning the full, complete persona of Zeir Anpin, of the small countenance. What's the small countenance? It's the way God is reflected inside a person. So it's a pretty big deal. Okay, so this Zah, he now has tzara. So right away you see that the Adam here is like Shema. It's the name Memhei. It's the filling of Hashem's name. It's very high up. So this Zah, yesh bo Shema, right? Because he's Adam. Adam equals 45. Shema is 45. The Milui Alfin, right? And Shema is Yud, Vav, Dalid, Hey, Aleph, Vav, Aleph, Vav, Hey, Aleph. It's called the filling with Alephs. Kiminyan Adam, and it equals 45 like Adam. Same thing. V'zeu seder hitchalkut Hashem hazeh bo. And this is how he's going to explain about Zah now. He's going to say this whole name, Yud, there's 10 letters, Yud, Vav, Dalid, Hey, Aleph, Vav, Aleph, Vav, Hey, Aleph. Know that they divide in the full persona of Zah, of Zeir Anpin. How do they divide? Hinei kutzo shel Yud keter shabo. So the tip of the Yud, and again the Yud has three tips. So which one are we talking about? Usually it's the bottom left one. That is the crown in Zah. Yud Chochma. The Yud is Chochma, and the Hey is Bina. So that we all know. The Aleph shel Milui Hey Aleph. So now we've done so far Yud Vav Daled Hey Aleph. Now we have the Aleph of the Hey Aleph. That's his dat. That's his knowledge, the sphere of knowledge. V'gimel otiyot Vav Aleph Vav Batiferet Shebo. And so Vav Aleph Vav. Vav in general is Tiferet, right? Bina Gvura, I think that's what he's saying. Bina Gvura I don't know what the shin is here. I think they would say Gvina Gvura Hey. Should be a Hey. Gvina Gvura Hod Shavo Kanada. Vehei Achona Benetzach Hod. And the final Hey Aleph is in victory and acknowledgement. Shem Trei Palgeit Gufa. So you see that he doesn't have a Malchus. He went all the way down to... Ve'alef de Miluya Hey Hi Be'yisod Shabo. So the Hey is Netzach and Hod. And the Aleph is... Okay, this is just a map. It gives a map. There's no Malchus. V'nei ba'avaya zo yesh ba gimel alefin. So this filling of the name of 4 letters has 3 Alephs in it. Where are the Alephs? They're exactly in the dot, we said, in the Tiferet, and the final thing he said is the Yisod, so they're right down the middle axis. The Keter is not. The Keter is the tip of the Yud. And the Malchus he doesn't have at all. So he has these 3 all the way down. These 3 are called Dati. Okay? Da, Tiferet, Yisod. That's what they're called. He's going to say it in a second, I think. They're all along the middle axis. Except he adds here that the Tiferet, it's in the middle third.
Isn't the Kava Emsa'i representative Yaakov? Or not?
Okay, there is such a thing that Yaakov is Bariach HaTichon Mavriach Min HaKatzeh LaKatzeh. Because Tiferet is the main thing in the Bariach HaTichon, in the middle axis. But notice here that what he says is that in the Tiferet, it's the middle third. So this is a big deal. In the Arizal, everything divides into 3s. But the most important thing that divides into 3s is the Tiferet. So it has a top third, a middle third, and a bottom third. Why does he mention this? We'll see in a second. Each one of them is a light of Aleph, of the letter Aleph. So we find that he has 3 whole lights. What that means, I have no idea. But now if we do 3 times the value of or, of light, yes, 3 lights. And the Aleph here represents light. It's the first letter of light. Oh. So if you do 3 times O, how much do you get? You get 621, because each O is 207. So 3 times 207 is 621. But in the Gematria, he says here, all Gematria Keter. It's just equal to Keter. Keter is 620. There's no difference. By the Arizal, add 1, take away 1. It's fine. So it's all good. He's not exact in that sense. He's not Rav Ginsburg's Kabbalah, which is all exact. He doesn't use the additional 1 or take away 1. And there's a whole teaching behind it. Why in their time, in the Arizal's time, you could get away with it, and why today when you say it to somebody, they look at you weird. Like, that's not mathematics. You know that 3 times 207 is 621, so you can't just say it's 620. You can't. It's not the same number. In the Arizal's time, there was no problem with it. In our time, because the nature of people has changed, they can't accept something like that, so you have to do exact things. Still, the teachings are teachings. The math is just as I told you once, it's like a shorthand to come and say this whole idea that these 3 lights are the crown. Because his crown is built of these 3 lights. So these 3 lights down the middle axis in the Tiferet Yesod of Zah, they are chasadim. They're loving kindness. Because we know that in the first 2 days of creation, there are 3 words that are mentioned 5 times. Or Maim Rakia, which is a big teaching in the Arizal apart from this. So the Or is the Chesed, and the Maim is the Gvura, and the Rakia is the Tiferet. So these 3 Or, they came from the 5 Or in the first day of creation, so they're all loving kindness, he says. And so Zah was built from the first 3 times it says light in the story of creation. So those 3 created Zah. ביום ראשון. והי פעמים מים ביום שני, והם הי חסדים, הי פעמים אור, והי גבורות, הי פעמים מים. Okay. And then you have 5 times מים. מים is 90, so 5 times 90 is 450, so that's 10 times Adam. בסוד מימתי מזכירים גבורות גשמים. So from what? So we see that Mayim is like Me'ei Matai. That's how we understand it. That Me'ei Matai and Gvurot Kshamim and the strength of the rain, this all ties into water and to Ei Matai. It's like Reb Zusha. Remember the story about Reb Zusha? Reb Zusha, when he sat down to learn Mishnah. It's the first Mishnah. Matai Korin et Shema ba'Aravit. So he says, Me'ei Matai is out of fear. Korin et Shema ba'Aravit. When you say Shema in the evening, you should have fear of God. So he took it from here. Because the Arizal here says it's Gvura. It's all awe. It's all fear of God. So to understand this, we have to understand that the mother persona, Ima, comes into Za, meaning that she's like on the inside of Za. She gives him his life force. And when she does so, there are three different aspects. So the first one is when all of the mother is in the knowledge. This is all very technical. It doesn't mean anything until you translate it in Chassidus. Or it means very little. It's not that it doesn't mean anything. It's very hard to understand. It's just symbolism. The second is in the middle axis, but this time, Bashlisha Emtsaida Tiferet Dezah, like we said, in the middle third of Tiferet, and then Bina comes into there. Why? Ki ad sham ayu mechusim toch yesod tvuna, v'sham b'chazeh dezah nidgalu. So what's special about the second third of Tiferet? The special about it is that until the first third, everything is concealed. Everything has a vessel. And he says the vessel comes from another aspect of Ima, which is called Tvuna. It's a lower aspect of her that extends down. So it covers the lights that she's giving. To say in another way of saying it is, if I translate this psychologically, so I say that when the child is suckling from his mother, he doesn't create a sexual attachment to his mother. Because it's covered. It's as if you don't know where the breasts are from. You just don't know. I mean, I'm giving you a completely off, just taking one of the psychological insights you can get from this. That the child doesn't know. It's not just because he doesn't know because he's too young. He can be older, even when he's older. You know, the Teimanim is this nurse until the kids were like 6-7 years old. You heard about this, right? It was in your time for sure it was. So people used to nurse until and there was no problem. They never heard of somebody who then had an Oedipus complex. That didn't exist. Why? So the simple explanation is that there's something covering it up. So you could say, as Freud would say, it's a taboo. You can't even think it. Say it. I don't know. There's a whole issue today. What's covering? Is it the sun that's covered, or is it the earth that's with its magnetic field shielding the earth and covering the sun? It doesn't matter. So it could be that it's coming from the child, it could be it's coming from the mother. It doesn't matter. In the end, there's like a barrier that doesn't let it in, and actually because of that, there becomes an attachment in the adult male, and a what do you call it? Meshicha. How do you say meshicha?
Attraction. An
attraction to that part of the body, but on other women, not on his mother. On his mother, he can't. So it's closed somehow. So, but from there and down, in the middle, in the belly, it's open. There's nothing covering it. Exactly what that would mean, I don't know. I have to think about what it would mean psychologically. But until there, it's closed. והרי יש להם שם בחינה שנייה שהם מגולים, מה שלא היה כן למעלה. In any case, in the middle third of the Tiferet, the light that's coming down from mother is revealed, because there's nothing covering it there, only in the top third. ובחינה שלישית, and the third light, הוא עניין חזרתם להתקבץ ולהתחבר כל האורות יחד למטה ביסוד עצמו, and then all three lights, and actually all five lights, it doesn't say now, but they are all going to join together in the foundation of זה. נמצא כי ג' בחינות היו אל החסדים דזה שמצד אמא, ושלושתם בקו האמצעי בדתי, דעת תפארת יסוד, והם עצמם בחינת ג' אלפין שאמרנו שיש בשם מה של כללות זה, אשר שלושתם גם כן כולם בקו האמצעי דעת תפארת יסוד. Okay, all this is very nice. So he gave us the structure. ועניין ג' בחינות אלו, so what does it mean that there are these three lights? הם עניין ג' אור הנ"ל, והבן זה מאוד. So you just understand this, meaning meditate on this. It doesn't tell you what he means. אומנם, שני נשים יש לזה. זה himself has two feminine counterparts. מאחוריו, and they're behind him, just as it was in Adam, that they were back to back. But here they're not necessarily the back, they can also turn to be facing him. והם לאה ורחל, and they're called Leah and Rachel. ונודע כי לאה היא בדעת דזה עד החזה. Leah is in the top part, from the dot, from the neck, down to the chest. ורחל מן החזה עד סיום רגליו. And Rachel is what completes the feminine counterpart from behind him, and it's the part from the chest down to the feet. ואם כן, נמצא כי כשנחלק ג' אורות הנ"ל, שהם שלוש בחינות שיש בחסדים, שזה מצד התבונה וחלק לשתיהן, נמצא כי לאה לוקחת אור אחד לבד, so Leah gets only the top, the one that's down to the chest, the one that's in the neck, she gets one light, and the one that comes from knowledge of זה, כי שם ראשה והתחלתה, ורחל לוקחת שתי אורות התחתונים, שהם אחד בחזה בשליש האמצעי, והאור שני ביסוד הזה. So but Rachel gets twice as much. How do you know this? So we know this is how it was in their household also. That he always gave Rachel twice as much.
Where did he say that?
Where did he say that?
Oh, he says it about what's good.
No, say it. Elkanah and Hannah and Pnina.
Yeah.
So they're a second version. Elkanah, Hannah, and Pnina are considered to be a second version of Yaakov, Rachel, and Leah.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he sees it, because you're repeating the same structure again. That's how the Arizal thinks. He sees the pattern repeating. So if it says that about Pnina and Hannah, that Elkanah, because Hannah had no children, she was akara, she was sterile, he gave her twice as much food when they went up to the temple. So the same thing happened by Yaakov, even if it doesn't say it explicitly, because Rachel was akara, because she had it's the same thing, same story. How many children did Rachel have? Did Leah have? 7. How many children did Pnina have? 7.
Yeah, but there's one big difference.
What? They were all sons.
They all died.
7.
And Hannah had many children. More than 2.
Eventually, she had 7. Everything that her.
Yeah, but that's not what happened in
Right, because not everything repeats. It was less rectified for them. They were sisters, Rachel and Leah. So they cared very much for one another, even though they were married to the same man. But when it came to Pnina and Hannah, so Pnina was like a Yetzer Hara to Hannah. She completely belittled her, embarrassed her. כי כל מקום זהו לרחל, וזהו שכתוב לעיל באורך בעניין ג' אורות אלו בסוד, פסוק, ושמתי קדקוד שמשותייך. So this is a whole learning, that if we take chesed, we're talking about chesed here, right? Chesed is how much? 72. If you divide it into 3, how much is each third? Thank God it divides into 3. We don't have to take one off or put one on.
No.
24. 24 times 3 is 72. So each one of these 3 chasadim is called a kaf dalet. Kad. kad is a vessel. Who did we see moving vessels around? Rivka. At first, the vessel was on her shoulder. So that's Keneged Leah. Then she brings it down to her chest, it's Keneged Rachel. Anywhere below the chest is Rachel. So what do we see? That Rachel has two places where it can be. This is a mimer from the Arizal somewhere else. So he says, Rachel has kad. She has two places for the vessel, on her chest and on her feet. And Leah only has one place. So why do it this way? So you see the math. This 72, chesed divided by 3. Each one is...
Yeah, I don't see the point that we're getting to. I don't understand what you're saying really.
נמצא כי כפי זה שהכתר של זה הוא שלם מן הגימל אורות הנ"ל, שם גימטריה הכתר, וכתר של רחל יש בו בית פעמים, או שם... I don't know what this means. שהם שני שלישי הכתר לבד, וכתר של לאה הוא שליש אחד, שהוא אור אחד לבד, ומלבד זה היתרון שיש לרחל עליה, יש לה עוד יתרון. So the first thing he says, that Rachel has twice as much chesed as Leah does. That's the first thing we learn. עוד יתרון, she has another advantage, כי שני אורות של רחל הם החסדים המגולים כנודע. That from the second third of the chest and down, second third of Tiferet and down, everything is revealed. So Rachel's loving kindness is revealed. What is that? That's exactly the story. That Yaakov loved, chesed is love. So he loved Rachel openly. But his love for Leah was intellectual, was like in the mind. It couldn't be seen. So Leah seems to be snua. She seems to be hated. וזהו טעם להיות דיני לאה רבים על של רחל כפליים כנ"ל. And that's why it seems to be that that Leah has a lot more harsh judgment against her than Rachel does. ואחר שנתבהר לעיל עניינה, נתחיל לבאר פסוקים. So now we can, after we've explained this whole map, now we can begin to explain the verses in our parsha. אדם כי יהיה וכו'. כי הנה אין הגימל אורות הנ"ל יוצאים לחוץ לבנות ולתקן פרצוף לאה ורחל, רק בהיות גם כן בחינת המוחין דזה, למצד אבא מלובשים בתוכם כנ"ל. So he says, these lights come out to build Rachel and Leah only when the father persona combines with the mother persona. And before he does that, the lights are there because they come from the mother, they don't come from the father. And until the father doesn't couple with the mother principle, with the mother persona, they can't be revealed. So they're still all in the mother. והטעם לפי שהמוחין דאבא הם הדוחין את החיצונים מלהתאחז בחזדים של הבינה המגולים מן החזה ולמטה, ששם נקרא עץ הדעת טוב ורע, שמשם יונקים החיצונים כנ"ל. So the father, he's needed. He says, why is it only when the father persona, the Partzuf Abba, is added to Partzuf Ima? Because if he's not there, then whatever the mother is going to reveal, whatever energy she's going to give in the form of loving kindness and these chasadim and these orot, is going to fall into the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's going to be kidnapped, basically. It's going to be hijacked. The father is what protects it. What does that mean? So in psychology, it's very simple. It means that if you use your intellect to look at yourself, meaning to reveal yourself, then you are prone to be hijacked by the negative inclination. The negative inclination is waiting all the time for you to begin to think about yourself, to look at yourself, to see yourself. I need to get dressed. I need to wash myself. I need to this. I need to that. You have to add the father principle in. What does that mean? You have to have bittul. Why am I doing this? Because Hashem told me to. Very simple principle, very simple Hasidic principle that came out of this. It's not that you can't think, you have to deal with yourself, the things you have to do. Why am I doing this? Because Hashem told me to. I'm not doing it for my... What?
That's like everything.
Right. And that's called adding Abba into Ima. Ima is the considerations, the understanding, it's the comprehension. I have to understand things about myself. For me to be able to do it correctly, it has to be done with a feeling of self-nullification. That's what Abba gives. And then even the energy that's expended and is directed at looking at myself can't be hijacked. It can't be turned into something against me. Velachem, it's a deep insight, no?
Yeah, but I don't understand it.
Why? You're saying, if the mother comes by herself down, what does that mean? It's like introspection. What's happening inside of me? My mind is my mother. And it's now going to be distributing light, meaning it's going to be like putting a flashlight on my neck, on my consciousness, on my chest, on my feelings, on my actions. It's now going to look at all of it. And what's going to happen? I'm going to be full of myself. If I begin to look at myself and I'm this, I'm that, I'm that.
The way Joseph called his hair.
For instance, it caused a lot of trouble. That was even worse because it wasn't down here; it was in his crown. So to counter that, there has to be the Abba. What Abba does is he commands. He turns everything into a command. He says, really, you're only doing the divine will. He's self-nullification. He's the power of self-nullification in my mind. And I say, why am I now showering? Because Hashem said you have to be clean. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Everything. Why am I introspecting? Because Hashem said I need to. That's how it works. So he counters the danger in pointing the consciousness at myself. Okay? Again, in the Arizal, you see that this is not written. You have to learn Chassidus to understand this interpretation.
Okay, except I didn't really understand it.
Which part didn't you understand?
Or just the whole thing is too...
It's technical. It's very simple. It's just technical in the end. But it comes to give an idea. He says you have to meditate on this. You have to think, what am I telling you here? Okay?
Perhaps I'm tired, but you left me behind.
Let's continue a little bit more to see what happened here. Okay?
I'll get more lost.
No. ולכן, אז נאחזים החיצונים. ולכן תמורת, if Abba is not there, then when the lights come out of Ima by itself, then they will be hijacked by the chitzonim, by the negative forces. Negative forces in Chassidus means self-worth or self-value. Okay? The person has self-righteousness, whatever he thinks about himself. ולכן תמורת ג' אורות שהם הג' אלפין במילוי מה כנ"ל אשר יוצאים ומתקנין את לאה ורחל באחורזה. הנה תמורת אלו יוצאים 3 מיני נגעים הנקראים שאת ספחת בהרת. So instead of being the lights that build, that go from Za, the male side, to the female side, to rectify the female side, to build it, in the same way that after God separated them, he had to build up the female. Vayiven et Tatzela. They become, because they don't have Abba, because they're lacking the light of Abba, the input of Abba, of the father, so because of that, they become blemishes. And they have 3 names, because we said there's 3 lights. The Da'at, Tefillah, and Yesod. So they're called Set, Sapachat, Beheret. And that's the pshat, right? Chazal turned the Set, Sapachat, and Beheret into 2 that are 4. So the Set and Sapachat, and Beheret is just a second subtype in each one of them. That's how Chazal do it. But in Kabbalah, the Arizal has a tendency to divide things into 3. So this works well for him that there's only Set, Sapachat, Beheret. He doesn't get into into Chazal's. Here he doesn't get into the Gemara's discussion of it that turns into two that are four. So all the negative traits that a person has, they come from these lights that came out only from mother without father. ואין שם נעשה פרצוף לאה ורחל וזכור כלל. זה שאין נעשים שני פרצופים אלו לאה ורחל כאן, אלא אחר התגלות מוחין דאבא בזה. And the result is that there's no feminine. Because he didn't build it up. So they're not built. Until he adds, again, this is not something that happens once in life. This is constantly happening. So whenever a person wants to have a full expression of his soul, he has to express himself both in a masculine way and a feminine way, and then he's complete. So the feminine here is not built. The feminine is always the vessel. So there's no vessel here. And the lights are just coming out. They're not being captured by his feminine side, because it's not building the feminine side. His achoraim, when I say that they're behind, I don't mean really that they're behind. What I mean to say is that they're not conscious. And every person has two levels of non-conscious reality. One's called Leah and one is called Rachel. Leah is like the unconscious of the mind. Rachel is like the unconscious of the emotions and the actions. There are two different types of unconscious. This, by the way, Freud doesn't differentiate between them. He only sees one type of unconscious. And he usually only talks about things that happened to me. But really, it's how I perceive myself because of these lights that came out and didn't have a vessel. That's what it says. That a person who doesn't have a wife, who's without a wife, doesn't have a fence around it, doesn't have a border around it. Here the understanding is he doesn't have a vessel. There's nothing to capture these lights. So they're being hijacked by the negative forces. By the tumah. ואל תטמע בזה כי הנגע איננה הטומאה עצמה. So now, don't be so surprised, he says, that the blemish, the nega, like tzara, setza, sasapachat beheret, these three types of blemish, three types of leprosy, one might say, they're not tumah. They're not the tumah itself. Because what did we say? We said because the lights are coming out without a vessel, they're being hijacked by the tumah. The tumah is taking them. So it's not the light themselves. The light itself is very high. It's the lights of the mother. But because there was no father involved, so because of that, when it came out, it was captured. It didn't have anywhere to go into. And then again, this is happening all the time. This is just a continual process in every soul. So don't be surprised that I'm telling you that the tumah is not the blemish. What is it? The blemish, rag b'chinat dinim kashim kedoshim, there are only harsh lights that are holy. Why are they harsh? Because from Ima, from the mother without the father, it's always harsh judgments. That's what we say, that the harsh judgments come from Bina. Bina mina dinin mitarin. It's a statement that repeats a lot of times in the Zohar. And they're holy. But then, asher mimenu yenikat hachitzonim matmiim. So, how did they suddenly become tumah? They can become tumah because then the negative forces came, and so essentially, a person could be leaking this holy, harsh light and never become tummy. Why? Because he's in such a holy environment that there's never any tumah there. There's never any extraneous forces trying to capture him, capture his energy. Imagine there was somebody like that who's so removed, he doesn't come in contact with anything that's tummy. So he's leaking energy, but nothing's happening. He's not becoming tummy. He's not becoming defiled because of it. So what's Aaron's role? So he says, "Ve'ino nitkan ela al yedei Aaron haKohen Abba Ila." And now he says, Aaron's role is to be the father here. He becomes the father. When I say Kohen Isha Chesed, what I'm saying is that he's above Chesed. What's above Chesed? Chokhmah. And the Kohanim were always the sages. Before we had sages, we had Kohanim, right? The Kohanim were the ones who taught the halacha. So they were the sages. They were the sages. So Aaron, a Kohen, and where do we see it? Because Aaron, the Rizal repeats this many times. I don't know if he repeats it here. I don't remember. He says Aaron otiyot nir'eh, to see. Nir'eh is to be seen, but nir'ah, nir'eh. In any case, he's the eyes. And the eyes of the congregation are the wise ones, right? The wise people. So he's sight, he's chokhmah. So Aaron plays the role of the wisdom that this person didn't have. Now, why didn't he have wisdom? Why didn't he have the Abba inside the lights of Ima? Why? He doesn't explain here. He doesn't say why this didn't work out. He just says he didn't have Abba. In Chassidus, it's explained. He didn't have Abba, meaning he didn't have Bittul. And that, any mimer you'll see from the Rebbe about Tzaras, he'll mention this. Because it's a basic thing. It says the rectification for Tzaras is to have Bittul. Meaning, and that the classic mimer that people learn on Tazria-Metzora is the one that starts that person who's Metzora has the lights of Ima, but he doesn't have the lights of Abba. So everything starts from here, from this chapter. So the Kohen now works as the father. He's a surrogate for the father that he didn't have. It's like he becomes his father. וזה לשון זוהר פרשת תזריע, דף מ"ט, and this is what the Zohar says about this in the third part, folio 49. אמר רבי יצחק והכתיב נגע צרת כי תהיה באדם ורובה אל הכהן. אמר אי הכי דא קודשא בריחו, because it says be'adam. Be'adam is קודשא בריחו. קודשא בריחו is a connotation in the Zohar for za, for zer and pin. אמרו לי, so if it says Adam, it's talking about za. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, so it must be that he's talking about za. He said, yes, he's talking about za. וכולו. אמר לו רבי יוסי, I think it's Yossi, either Yossi or Yehuda, I don't know. הכי תנינן, נגע צרת, נגע הוא דינא תקיפה, דשרי בעלמא. צרת, סגירו דנהורה אילה, סגירו דטיבו אילה, דלא נחית מעלמא. So he says, you should know that nega tzarat are harsh judgments that come down to dwell in the world. They come to be in the world. So tzarat is sgiru de nahora. Tzarat is the opening of the light. Segiru de tivu ilah. It's the opening of the supernal good. De lo nachit me'alma. That doesn't go down from the world. Ki tiyeh ba'adam stam. And when it says ki tiyeh ba'adam, it's adam stam, meaning in za. V'uva el kohen da kohen diltata dal yadei itakan lemaftecha hahu segiru. Sorry, segiru is tzarat in Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken. What he's saying, he's using it here in the two meanings. He's saying it's both tzarat, and he's saying not like I said that it's open. He's saying it's closed, like you understand it in Hebrew. V'le'adlaka butzina. So comes the Kohen, and he opens it because it's been closed, and he lights the candle. So what is this all talking about? Gam sham nidber b'zar, he brings another zar. Gam sham daf nun aleph amru sham v'chedaha v'nachit neged tzarat have midakei atra v'afik rucha misave me'atrei ואין צריך להרחיב הביאור לכל דברי הזוהר האלה, כי מובנים מאליהם ממה שכתבתי, וגם מה שכתוב ותשים עיניך בבך תבין. So now he's going to explain what these Zohars mean. They're basically saying the same thing 3 times. הנה כוונת דבריו הוא כי נגע הוא קדושה. So the meaning of all that the Zohar said is that the nega, the blemish, the tzaras is holy. אלא שהוא דין קשה. But that it's harsh judgment. It's harsh lights. והנה הכהן הוא אבא שהוא דוחה את רוח הטומאה. And the Kohen acts as the father, and it pushes away the tuma, the defilement, אשר באדם, או בבית המנוגע, והגורם לנגע זו הוא הצרת אשר תרגומו סגירו, So, and it pushes away the tumah, and the tumah is what's causing the tzarat to be defiled, not the tzarat itself. The tzarat itself is just a blemish. It's a lot of light. But the tumah comes in, it hijacks it, and then it makes it defiled. And what it means here, that it's the closed supernal light, means that it's really from the mind of Zah. The mitzad Abba Chochma Ilah shelo nitgalu b'Zah, he goremet hatzarat shu achizat hachitzoniim. So because this light is so high, that really is coming from, it was supposed to come from the Father through the Zah, and it didn't. So these lights, because it only went through the mother, they didn't go through the father. So because of that, they can be hijacked by the negative forces. וזה סוד שאמור רז"ל שהמצורע חשוב כמת, כי כבר נתבהר אצלנו בעניין האבילות כי הסתלקות מוחין עלין דזש מצד אבא הוא גורם את המיתה. וזהו סוד ימותו ולא בחוכמה. So now he gets into a lot of other explanations that are already... But this is how the Arizal works.
I don't understand it.
So, next time. You didn't understand the psychological description?
The wording was too complicated. Too many terms and too
right.
many... It takes a bit of getting used to.
It takes some getting used to. I think the Gemara you can pick, because there's a lot of... The Gemara is slow, in a certain sense. It takes a long time until the stuff develops. It also takes time getting used to. But the Arizal, because it's so dense, you can read the same page again and again and again and again, just until you begin to separate the terms one from before it becomes... In the beginning it's a salat. It's like a salad. You can't tell the heads from tails. Slowly you get into his style, which is, first I'll give you the map, then I'll tell you how I use this map to interpret something in Torah. So where'd you get the map?
Put your ways on.
See you tomorrow? So tomorrow we'll learn something more.
Okay.